Sanders was my big brother. He was 5 years older than me, and we grew up on the Knob in Cleveland Springs, Kentucky. And he was your typical older, aggravating brother. We grew up with not a lot, but we never went without food or love. And my dad worked a public job, but my mom and my brother and I raised cucumbers and tobacco and supplemented the income. For one thing, he was a very hard worker. After school, he had a job at the sewing factory. And then during the summer, farmers would come from all the surrounding counties to get my brother and maybe keep him a week to work him on their farm, because news travels fast when you get somebody that will do a good job for you.
Elzie had no fear of anything. He would do stuff. He would walk across a pond and he couldn't swim, but he would walk across a pond and jump up to breathe and go back to the bottom and walk across the pond. He had no fear.
I knew he was really special. When we graduated high school, I went to college, he went in the Army. He volunteered to go to Vietnam, and I thought, that's special, but it's dangerous. And I tried to talk him out of it, but he said, no. He said, if I'm in a dangerous situation like that, I'll go up quicker in rank.
I got my draft papers in 1966, and in my mind, that was a death sentence. You're going to Vietnam and you're going to die. There's I think a special bond when someone says, I'll go with you. Plus, when I went to catch the bus for induction down here in downtown Brownsville on October 18th, 1966, I thought I was going alone. And when I got there, Elzie was there to go with me, which I didn't know at the time. I thought I was going by myself. Elzie was going with me.
The night before he left to go to Nam, we went out and talked for a few hours, and he told me when he left, he said, I'll never see you again.
My first contact with Elzie Sanders was the day I arrived. He looked at my helmet band where I had printed "In God We Trust" and asked me if I was a Christian, and I pointed up to the heavens. And from that day forward, we became very close. We had many conversations about life, God, and heaven. Each time we saw each other, regardless of where we were at, we both pointed up. It became our thing.
He wrote to us as often as he could to try to keep us from worrying. He sent us audio tapes, and he would talk to Mom and Dad and me individually on the tapes. As a 15-year-old sister, he always had words of wisdom on how to be a good teenager, how to stay out of trouble, and how to leave boys alone.
He wrote like 40 people every week. I got a letter every week the whole time he's there. Everybody he wrote to, he wrote them every week. And him in the middle of a war zone. But it was that important to him to stay in contact with us.
Elzie and I became pretty good friends, as I was the medic in the platoon and he was the radio man. Over the course of 7 months that I was there with the Wolfhounds before I got wounded, I got to know Elzie very, very well. Elzie Sanders always remained a good friend, and his nickname was Kentucky. So if guys refer to him as Kentucky, that's just a tribute. On November 11th and 12th, 1967, we were in the field. We got up on the 12th and swept through a village and marched about half a mile or mile and a half to 2 miles. And Captain Springer, seeing that we were in a shaded area along a cart path, that we should stop for lunch, open up the sea rations, and take a break. They dispatched Elzie along with Sergeant Carnahan and 3 riflemen down to about 2 football fields away on the corner of the rice paddies at the next tree line, and that was an observation post. They took the radio, and they were just to watch out for enemy down that way as we were in the stand down mode for about an hour. It wasn't very long after they got down there, we heard the gunfire, and Elzie was on the radio saying, "We've got movement in the tree line right ahead of us, and we've taken a couple of casualties, they're wounded, and we need a medic right now." And I grabbed my aid bag and ran down to that corner where Carl Davis had been shot in the arm and Walt Dula had been shot in the rear end. And I took care as best I could of Carl Davis. He was bleeding pretty bad. I got him bandaged up, and a bullet came in and went through both my hands, leaving me pretty much disabled, unable to do anything, and my right wrist was bleeding pretty bad. Elzie grabbed my medical kit, wrapped up the wounds that I had, gave me a shot of morphine from a syringe from the bag, and turned around and went over to treat Carl Davis, and I watched as Elzie took a fatal shot. At that point, I got up and took off back down the path to where the other radio guys were interfacing with the helicopters in support. They got us out, and at that point, I knew that Elzie had died. Along with Elzie, Captain Springer passed away. Greg Goslin was his radio operator. Jacob Ortiz was a platoon sergeant with the weapons platoon, and he tried to go rescue Captain Springer, and he was killed. So we lost 4 that day, and there were 3 of us that were wounded.
Almost biblical in that no greater love hath man than, sacrifice himself. So when I found out about his death, that made the war real, because it was someone that I knew, and I knew from, history before Vietnam. His death has always been personal for me because of that. And like I said, we had a history even prior to the military, so that made it more personal.
Hard worker, just a good guy, just a good friend. He was just hard to describe. He was just one of a million, as you would say. To me, he was anyway.
Well, I could tell him anything, and he would tell me anything. We were closer than brothers. He was just the best friend you could ever have.
It's been almost 60 years. I just wanted people to remember that he lived. He didn't get to enjoy the things that he fought for. He didn't get to have children, grandchildren. He didn't get to grow old. And it just puts things in perspective for me.
We owe them all. They provide the freedom for us today.
If you don't believe in guardian angels, I'll tell you, Elzie speaks to me quite a bit. And I firmly believe that his spirit lives on.